Season 17 of Pokemon Go PvP has started around the world, and until March 1st, this is the meta we're going to be looking at. Yes, today we're going to be running through the Great League, Ultra League, Match League, the best Pokemon this season to run, teams to run, move counts, and everything you need to really get you ready to hop into this meta. So without further ado, let's hop on our favorite website, PvPoke, and start with the best new buff Pokemon this season. Okay, so the Great League meta this season has been really switched up because Steel Wing got a buff, which now makes it a Poison Jab clone. And the one winner for Steel Wing is going to be the Pokemon Skarmory. Yes, you can see Skarmory is now ranked #1 in the Great League with this new Poison Jab Steel Wing, running the moves as Steel Wing, Brave Bird, and Sky Attack. This is huge for Skarmory because not only does it allow it to beat popular meta threats like Carbink, since it's double weak to Steel, but it also still has that flying coverage for things like Medicham, which we'll talk about in a bit, and also just to hit things neutrally hard. As you can see, if we take a look at some of his matchups, obviously destroying Superior and destroying all grass types, and also destroying Gligar, which was a very popular pick last season. If you notice, most of the popular picks last season get pretty hard countered by Skarm. Now, obviously, he still does have its bad matchups, specifically things like Bastiodon, Galarian Stunfisk, which might make a resurgence. Swampert's not great for it. It's still probably gonna be the #1 Pokemon this season, so definitely get a Skarmory built if you don't have one. Second Pokemon for the Great League we can talk about is gonna be Azumarill. The move Bubble got buffed, giving it 1 more damage, which you might not think is a lot, but it really brings Azumarill back into the meta and picking up a lot of matchups that actually before it used to actually potentially even lose to Medicham. Azumarill's definitely a Pokemon you probably already have, but you can make great work of it this season. Next up in the Great League, let's talk about Vigoroth. Especially this season with a bunch of flyers getting buffed like Skarmory, Vigoroth getting Rock Slide is going to be huge for it. It gives it great coverage against those flying type Pokemon and even ice type Pokemon. It is probably one of the safest Pokemon you can use as a safe swap right now because there's not a lot that really fully hard counters it other than things like Medicham, which we will still see a lot this season, but not as much probably. Another big one to mention is going to be the Poliwrath, getting access to not only a buffed Scald, which now has a 50% chance to debuff, but also having Icy Wind. We're going to see a lot more of this Pokemon in the Ultra League where it performs better, but can still be another fighting type Pokemon you could potentially use, but you might not want to, and I'll tell you why in a bit. Talonflame got access to Fly, which is finally gives Talonflame a flying type move that doesn't debuff it like Brave Bird. Great move. Honestly, Fly is actually a really strong move as well. Very cheap on energy and does good amount of damage. So definitely throw Fly on your Talonflames this season. And also Incinerate got buffed, doing 5 more damage, which is huge. Also, we have to look at Wishcash, which got access to Scald, now giving Wishcash kind of a similar vibe to Quagsire with that ground and water moves. Still probably won't be as preferred as Swampert, but still a cool Pokemon you could try. Also, Greedent got access to Trailblaze, which gives Greedent now grass coverage for all those water Pokemon that are becoming popular, like Swampert, Lantern, Azumarill. Probably won't run as much in the Ultra League, but still very good for the Great League because there's a lot of water types. Wigglytuff, this is a scary one, also got Icy Wind, which is a debuffing move on a Charmer. Yes, you can now go ahead and almost win every single 2-shield scenario with Wigglytuff as long as you just Charm, spam Icy Wind. Some people say it's low skill, which, you know, I'm not going to agree or disagree, but definitely consider Wigglytuff on the lead this season because it can really be effective in winning you the lead so that your backline can be aligned properly. Now, those are pretty much all the Pokemon that got buffed or new moves in the Great League. But what about Pokemon that are now stronger because the meta changed? Yes, let's take a look at these top Pokemon. We have Skarmory, Carbink here, Lickitung, Azumarill, Registeel, Medicham, Mantine, Pelipper. And one thing you'll notice here is a lot of these Pokemon are weak to one Pokemon, which is Lantern. Yes, Lantern this season ranked 19 with Water Gun, 34 with Surf, has so much great coverage against the meta. It can beat Skarmory. It can potentially beat Carbink with Water Gun. It can beat Azumarill. It can beat Registeel. It can beat Medicham in certain shield scenarios. It destroys Mantine. It destroys Pelipper. It can beat Gligar. It can beat Swampert. Some of these are shield scenario dependent, but Lantern beats a lot of this top meta. So definitely consider Lantern this season because it will be able to counter a lot of these super popular picks. I think Water Gun is going to be very effective this season because just that Water Gun damage would be huge against the ground types and the rock types, but Spark is also a viable option for your fast move. However, another Pokemon that beats a lot of these top Pokemon is going to be Credilli. Yes, Credilli, a little bit of a forgotten Pokemon, but with Bullet Seed, Rock Slide, and Grass Knot, it is able to beat a lot of top meta, and especially being able to beat things like Lantern, which again, like I just mentioned, will probably become pretty popular. I think Credilli is a great consideration this season, and really only loses to things that I don't see being as popular this season, like Medicham, Gligar, Superior, Lickitung, and Ninetales. Final thing I will mention is going to be Bastiodon is probably back. Yes, the big bull man, because of all these new flyers, things like Skarmory, Talonflame. All of these Pokemon are going to be pretty popular, so Bastiodon might find its way back into the meta, which is where having a fighter like Medicham or even that new Poliwrath might be a good idea. Now, that is pretty much the new meta. Again, you can come to PvPoke and check out all of these Pokemon if you'd like to see the top rankings, but I do want to mention what Pokemon kind of fell off in the Great League. And of course, first of all, that's going to be Medicham. The move Psychic got nerfed pretty hard, minus 10 damage, making now Dynamic Punch the probably move of choice for Medicham. Now, Dynamic Punch I find has less variable usage, which you can only use it in certain matchups in which counter is already doing pretty well. So Medicham, of course, won't have as much play this season. And also with those flyers becoming more popular, like Skarmory and Talonflame, Medicham really has nowhere to go, but can still be a considered Pokemon because it still is strong. Another one to mention is going to be Steelix. Steelix in the Great League dropped down to 203 because Breaking Swipe got nerfed this season and now only has a 50% chance to debuff instead of the 100% chance it had before. Kind of sucks because it's going to hurt a couple other Pokemon we're going to talk about later, but Steelix did need to be put in check. It was a pretty strong Pokemon. Other than that though, I'm not going to lie, not a lot of things got nerfed in the Great League. And overall, you can look forward to a lot of the Pokemon last season that you're using being strong this season. You just need to consider what is really popular in the meta right now. Now, I'm not the best at team building, so I'm going to link below a bunch of different YouTubers. You can go ahead and check out their videos on the top Great League teams to run this season. But I did run through PvPoke to throw a couple teams that you could go ahead and give a try if you don't want to do that. The first team is going to be Superior, Talonflame, and Skarmory, being kind of like an ABB team with some of these new Pokemon. The whole point is if you don't win lead with Superior, you're going to go ahead and swap your Skarmory to try to bait out an anti-flying Pokemon like Bastiodon or Lantern. That will then open up space for Talonflame to sweep in the endgame with the new move Fly. The second team will be Deoxys, Lickitung, and Bastiodon. I really think Deoxys is strong this season because there's not going to be that many counters to it since Carbink is up there, kind of making people scared of running dark types. We also have Lickitung on the safe swap because I think it's a pretty safe Pokemon this season since Medicham will be less popular. And finally, in the back is going to be Bastiodon. The whole point of this team is again ABB, swap Lickitung if you don't see a fighter on the lead, and then if there's no fighter in the back, hopefully Bastiodon can sweep the endgame. The final team I've created as kind of like an anti-meta team, running Lantern in the lead, Credilli safe swap, and Skarmory in the back. Now granted, this team is pretty weak to Registeel. I still think it is a huge core breaker, and you're going to have multiple answers to some of the top meta, like you have double answers to Azumarill, you have triple answers to Carbink, you have double answers to Skarmory, so I think it's a team to try out. Okay, now let's move into the next league, which is going to be the Ultra League. Now, the Ultra League didn't get changed up as much as the Great League, but let's run through some new mons. Of course, Poliwrath, we already mentioned it, going to be stronger in the Ultra League, being rank 3 this season. Again, Icy Wind and Scald, super strong moveset, and the counter moveset allowing you to beat things like Registeel and other, steel type. Also, actually, Icy Wind gives it a fighting chance versus Virizion, which is kind of nice. You see, that's a pretty close-ish matchup with Icy Wind. Next up, Talonflame. I remember the season when Talonflame was rank 1. Well, it's rising back to its former glory now. Rank 13 here, being able to beat a lot of the top meta, especially things like Virizion and Cobalion, which are super popular last season. But now Virizion is going to be a lot more scared because Talonflame kind of deletes that thing. Maybe Virizions will start running Stone Edge. Also, Lantern kind of is jumping up in the league. Not a move update for this thing, but again, Lantern is very strong this season just because of the amount of water types that I find are super popular, or that Pokemon that Lantern just beats. Skeledirge is another one I want to talk about. Incinerate got buff, and Skeledirge is probably the second best Incinerate user. Running Incinerate, Shadow Ball, Disarming Voice, has a lot of great matchups, especially the Swords of Justice. It walls the Swords of Justice. Staraptor is one I'm very excited to try out. Staraptor got access to Fly, similar to Talonflame, and Staraptor with Wing Attack, Fly, and Close Combat gives it great coverage against the meta, and now does not have to debuff itself every time it throws a move, because before it had Brave Bird in Close Combat. Having also a Fighting type move on a Flying type is so good. Like, for example, here, if you look at its losses, you would think Registeel beats it, but in certain shield scenarios, Staraptor can definitely beat Registeel and definitely beat Steelix. Greedent, which does have access to Trailblaze now. I don't think it's going to be preferred in the Ultra League just because you want that crunch to hit Giratina. I still think it is a cool coverage move that you could use if things like Poliwrath do get more popular. Oh, one more to mention is going to be Toxicroak getting access to Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball on Toxicroak is very nice because now it cannot get walled by things like Giratina Altered or Drifblim, and is able to hit those ghost type Pokemon or just hit huge neutral damage because Shadow Ball is such a good move. I do quickly want to mention a couple nerfs for the Ultra League. First of all, Heliolisk getting nerfed because of Breaking Swipe. Heliolisk is kind of dead now. Do not run it in the Ultra League. You're better off going with something like an Ampharos if you want an electric type attacker. Now, the Master League, to be honest, did not get changed up that much. It usually doesn't. And as you can see, a lot of the top Pokemon are still at the top, but a couple buffs we did get. Ho-Oh did get buffed, which is actually pretty big for Ho. Incinerate got buffed by 5 damage. It does help it in a couple matchups. I believe it can actually now beat Rayquaza in certain scenarios, and like we'll just beat things like Dialga safer. Overall, Ho-Oh is going to be pretty strong this season. It's not going to be meta breaking, but it's going to be very strong. Also want to mention Solgaleo got buffed. Fire Spin now does 1 more damage, and Solgaleo, you know, appreciates that buff. Doesn't really change too much for Solgaleo. It might pick up a matchup or 2, but still a cool Pokemon that got buffed. Not a lot of people have this Pokemon though, so it's not that important to mention. And honestly, probably one of my favorites is going to be Hisuian Avila getting buffed. Yes, Hisuian Avila got Icy Wind, which gives it the moveset of Powder Snow, Rock Slide, and Icy Wind, giving, I believe, Hisuian Avila one of the fastest Icy Winds in Pokemon Go. Being able to get there, I think it's 5 or 6 Powder Snows. This is going to be really big, especially because of how popular Dragon types are in the Master League. I think Hisuian Avila is going to be a great pick this season. Granted, it is double weak to Fighting type, but there is not a lot of Fighting type Pokemon in the Master League. So I think Hisuian Avila is really, really cool to consider. Also, it beats Zygarde Complete Form, which is not that popular, but it is one of the strongest Pokemon in the Master League. Definitely consider Hisuian Avila. Oh, actually, it's also pretty weak to Metagross, but still. Final thing I'm going to mention is a couple nerfs for the Master League. First of all, one we were very sad about. Rayquaza was a Pokemon that was never good for the Master League. Last season, it was great because of Breaking Swipe, but no longer is that. Well, maybe that's an exaggeration. Rayquaza is still very good in the Master League, being able to beat things like Garchomp, Groudon, Giratina, Origin Form, but without the 100% chance of debuff with Breaking Swipe, it does lose a couple new matchups here. Like, I believe it could beat Excadrill before with the debuffs. Yeah, overall, Rayquaza is still something to consider for the Master League, but probably not as strong as before. Also, Rhyperior did get buffed by Mudslap getting buffed, but with Breaking Swipe not becoming a permanent debuff, it really kind of hurts it. Rhyperior was a really cool pick last season, being able to, you know, core break a lot of strong teams. And final thing I'll mention, Haxorus, more for the Master Premier Cup was this thing kind of strong. Not as much anymore because, again, Breaking Swipe got nerfed. Again, it kind of sucks Breaking Swipe got nerfed because not only does it hurt Steelix, but it also hurts a lot of Pokemon in the other leagues, which kind of sucks. Anyway, guys, with that being said, I am going to shift your attention to this on screen. This is actually the move counts for the season 17 of Pokemon Go. Shout out to Yonkujin Go and Eternal Go for these move graphics. Go ahead and download this. I will link this below to this tweet. Overall, in terms of counts that have changed, if you're someone who knows move counts, Skarmory is good to know with Steel Wing. It's going to be 8-7-7-7 for the Sky Attack and always 8s for the Brave Bird. So actually getting there pretty fast. Poliwrath with Icy Wind is going to be 7-6-7-6. So getting there in 7 and then 6. It's pretty effective. Talonflame with Fly is actually really cool. It's 3 incinerates to the first fly, but then 2-2-2, which means after you throw the first fly, you can be very spammy with the flies, which before Flame Charge was 3-2-3-2, but now you can go 3-2-2-2 and just start spamming out flies, getting there every single 10 turns, which is really big actually. Vigoroth as well is for Rock Slide is 7-6-7-6, same thing as Machamp, who knows that move. Wishcash is going to be for Scald 6-6-5-6, and then Wigglytuff will be 8-7-8-7 for those annoying Icy Winds. Well, guys, that is about all you need to know for the new season. I'm going to be streaming this coming week, trying out some of these new Pokemon, these new moves, so definitely stay tuned for that to the stream schedule, but also check out all the other creators on screen right now and their videos because they are currently covering all of these top Pokemon. I will link a bunch of channels below. So if you're interested in learning about the new season or actually watching some real gameplay of these Pokemon and see if they're actually good, go check those out. New video tomorrow as well about how to improve at Pokemon Go PvP if you're looking to push your legend this season. We'll see y'all in the next one. Follow up with this, buddy. Peace.